Coming to you live from Atlanta, Georgia, it's time for another episode of Tech Talk with your host, Joey Klein.
Welcome, everyone. Another episode of Tech Talk. We've got a really nice slate of companies to talk to today, all very entrenched in the Atlanta technology scene, but very different types of operators here. You know, everyone from, founder to CEO to COO, and every range in between. So we are going to talk to, first, we're going to chat with Jim Berryhill, CEO and co-founder of DecisionLink. And then we're going to talk to Jim Garrett, chairman and co-founder of HireWire. And finally, Anita Reed, chief operating officer of mySupplier. As always, we start alphabetically first. Jim Berryhill, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing great. Thanks for being here, Joey.
Good. So as I was thinking about how we start this, your technology is focused on selling. And I had a joke in my mind about the world's oldest profession, and then remember, well, there's another world's oldest profession. But sales really is, if you think about what has stayed constant throughout time, humanity has always sold to each other, whether it's been some sort of a bartering system or whether it's been, SaaS sales like we have today. And you've really devoted your life to selling, haven't you?
Well, it wasn't by choice, but that's how I got started in the software industry. And I have a fundamental belief that sales is a noble profession, and a maybe less noble belief that if somebody doesn't sell something, nobody has dinner. So sales is very important in our world, in our economy, and a part of what our objective is to help sellers be better at their jobs, and by being better at their jobs means being better aligned to their customers and buyers.
I've always thought, and this is, of course, as a salesperson myself, I've always thought that selling, maybe more in elite institutions than perhaps day-to-day life, gets a bad rap. You don't really encounter many people right out of college that say, I want to go be a sales rep, right? Even if that is, as you said, a noble profession and a lucrative one, if you're good at it at that, more focused perhaps on working for a Fortune 500 company or a consulting firm or a bank. And I've always thought that institutions did young people a disservice by not really highlighting how rewarding a career in sales could be.
Yeah, that's a really good observation. And 25 years ago, it was different. But today, there are some 75 or 80 major universities in the United States that in their business schools have a bachelor's degree with a specialization in sales. And that has evolved to that point because that's where the jobs are whenever young people are coming out of college, is in sales roles, business development, inside sales, and graduation and so forth. And it's probably the most lucrative from an economic standpoint. And that is a part of the conversation, but it's a very rewarding occupation as well. But the marketplace recognition of sales as a discipline and a profession for training in business schools and so forth has been very gratifying.
That's actually extremely gratifying for me to hear. I feel like that's been somewhat of a sea change, even in the decade plus since I've been out of university. I don't remember anything like that being touted at the business school within my undergraduate level.
Well, the education system is conforming to the reality of the marketplace.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, so what has changed about sales so much, at least in the past 10 to 15 years, that necessitated, that drove you to, later on in your career, really become an entrepreneur and start DecisionLink?
Yeah, so I spent 30 years working for big enterprise software companies, and big in 1976 when I got my first job was about $15 million a year, not anything like it is today. But there's been, I think, a lack of codifying of professional tooling and training and infrastructure for sales. One of my best friends, my oldest friend, is one of the half a dozen engineers that codified the Six Sigma discipline at Motorola back in the early 80s. And sales is starting to have that kind of discipline and structure applied to it. And so we're about value selling. And people ask me who was the first value seller. I think it was probably Marco Polo on the Silk Road. But there hasn't been an application for to help sellers in the value selling process. You wouldn't think of doing financials with accountants and spreadsheets or CRM or manufacturing or distribution. And so we founded our business on the premise that value selling or value enablement as a business function should have professional application and capability associated with it to help not only sellers but marketing organization, customer care, customer success organization. If you think about the relationship between a buyer and a seller, it's all about buyer value. And so that's where we and why we founded our business. And for me personally, it was a matter of I was tired of working for big companies and not having the capabilities we needed to be successful. So a couple of colleagues and I started DecisionLink on that premise.
And I think what you're referring to is, you look across all functional areas of an organization, and there's some sort of ERP system that is sacrosanct, within that functionality that you would never think of doing, accounting's job or finance's job without it. And yes, sales and marketing has CRM, and that's an important tool. But what specifically does DecisionLink offer way above whatever, above and beyond what CRM can do that is integral to sales?
So CRM is a system of record, keeping score, counting dollars and tracking opportunities and so forth, but it doesn't add anything to the ability for a seller to relate to a buyer about what the buyer cares about. And then, my Central Florida kind of common way of saying, if I ask you for $1, I ought to be able to tell you what you're going to get for it, how much money you're going to save, how much risk you're going to mitigate, how much money you're going to make, whatever the case may be. And that work has historically been done by analysts and financial analysts and so forth using Excel, and nobody could understand what they were talking about except them. And so we built a application that morphed into a platform with a number of integrated applications that give the ability for everyone to participate in the value conversation. When you think about the value, I believe that people buy based on desire and emotion, and they justify it based on logic and empirical evidence. And the second part has been missing. We built our system to marry those together. Nobody wants to just look at a set of numbers. They want to know what the value is going to be to them, and they want to understand how it's going to impact the language of business, the office of the CFO, whatever you want to call it, and that's what we built to and for, with an emphasis on everybody sells. If I'm a sales rep, if I'm a pre-sales consultant, if I'm a marketing person. There's a lot of statistical evidence today that says that 70 to 80% of the traditional sales cycle occurs before a buyer ever talks to a seller. They examine the website, they self-educate, analyst coverage, so on and so forth. So marketers need to be able to publish that kind of content, that kind of attraction content before prospects are ever talking to them after a sale. In the subscription economy, it's massively important. If I make a $100,000 sale in the subscription economy, I've got to resell it every year to keep that customer. So the ability to quantify the value achieved and realized is a part of the play as well. And so that's why we call it the life cycle, and I call it the democratization of value. It's like customer care professionals, sales reps, marketing, the customer themselves, partners, everybody should be able to participate in the conversation about customer value.
Well, I think your point about how buying behavior has changed is an apt one, and all we really need to do is look at our own behavior when buying, right? And that can be buying something, as trivial as a under $100 purchase off of Amazon, or it can be something as monumental as a vehicle or a car. By the time that we encounter, someone on the showroom floor or our real estate agent, typically we probably already know at least half of what we need to know to make that decision.
Yeah, in fact, on the automobile side, a decision may be made before you even go, and it may be a matter of saying, am I going to buy from one of the online sources? Am I going to buy from a dealer? Am I going to buy new? Am I going to buy used? I know what I want before I go to the physical shopping or virtual shopping locations.
Yep. Now, of course, the caliber, look, your application can certainly apply to many different industries, I imagine. I'd love to hear a little bit more about the ones that you specialize in and have had success in. But, the customers that you're talking about, I imagine mainly a B2B sale as opposed to a B2C sale, correct?
Well, that's correct.
Okay.
And we have focused on B2B and primarily in the high-tech sector, of which there's about 25 subsectors within high-tech, because that's where we came from. We're a small company. A year and a half ago, we were 11 employees. 6 months ago, we were 25. Today, we're 45 and growing. But it applies to lots of industries. We have customers like Caterpillar and Thales that are in the industrial automation, advanced manufacturing businesses. We have fintech companies like Equifax here in Atlanta that are significant adopters of the ability to express value. We're looking in consumer packaged goods and systems integrators and lots of industries. So we'll be delivering a consumer product this year, and excited about that. But there's also premises in consumerish industries about expressing value. Think in terms of your local bank of in walks a florist, and then in walks an auto parts person, and then in walks a restaurant person. What if the bank branch manager and personnel could have intelligent conversations about those businesses and the wealth of services the bank could provide to enhance those businesses and relate it to those businesses? Yep. That's value selling, and you don't see it very much. And the reason for that is we haven't given the ability to systemically enable that, and that's what we're about. One of my favorite expressions: in 1900, there are 5,000 automobiles in the United States. 15 years later, when manufacturing, assembly, production line, some automation was applied and so forth, there's 500,000 a year being built in the United States. And that's what we're about for value.
Yeah. Well, look, I imagine that your genesis within high-tech sales is, look, part of it is small companies have to, focus. They can't,
right.
You can't spread too far, or else you're just nothing to everyone. And also that's where you came from, but it's pretty clear hearing you talk that this can be applicable to tons of different industries and tons of different types of sales.
Well, we're super excited about that, and I'll be candid. 3.5 years ago, we didn't have the expansion or the scope of vision we have today. But as we expanded, and in some of our customer base, we have some really brilliant individuals who have helped us expand our vision. We recently received a major investor from one of the top Silicon Valley venture capital firms, Excel, and one of the top partners in the world, Samir Gandhi. And they invested in us because they believe in the magnitude and scope of what value management means in the marketplace. And, and I've got a kind of a crazy metaphor that I use. When I was in college back in the early 70s, I kept the scorebook for the basketball team for a couple of years. And so I was the CRM. I was the system of record. And my buddy John Hughes was out on the basketball floor scoring 25 points a night. He was the value selling. He was the value guy. And, who do you think's name anybody knew? Wasn't mine.
Yeah.
It was the guy scoring. It was LeBron and Michael, Jordan, and so forth. And so we're super excited about the potential and for this industry segment, value management, we call it, and for the professionals for whom it helps make them better at their jobs.
And so it sounds like your buyer is typically, I imagine, a CRO, a CMO, but your actual user would probably be kind of, more junior, folks that, report directly to those decision makers.
Yeah. So up until 3 years ago, it was almost exclusively the CRO. We've expanded the portfolio to cover the entire buyer journey over the past 2 or 3 years. And so now we have chief marketing officers, chief customer officers, even chief product officers. At Caterpillar, it's the products organization that invests in and with us in DecisionLink for the Value Cloud. So it has changed, but you rightly note that that individual sales professionals and professional services implementers and customer care reps, that's where the rubber meets the road in relationship, and empowering those people to be better related to their customers and prospects is what we're all about.
Yeah. Well, I want to move a little bit away from product and technical specifications and just talk about company building and culture building in general. And I think there's two things to focus on. One is you're an Atlanta organization, right? You've taken funding from the West Coast, and there's a whole conversation we can get into about that. I bet Jim Garrett's going to have some interesting things to say about that as well. But, talk about building a company in Atlanta and talk about what you've taken from your past organizations that you're bringing to this one, right? Running a 10-person company is different from a 45-person company, and it's different from what your company is going to be in 12 months.
Yeah. So, I've led organizations with as many as 1,000 people, so it's way different. The big part of it to me has been it's mine, and I've been able to do what I want based on my values and my outlook and so forth. And I'm a learner, and I take advice and guidance and direction readily and with a high amount of desire. If you look at my board of directors and advisors and so forth, but being able to say, here's what I think the need is, and here's what we're going to build to, and here's the set of values we're going to seek to instill in our organization. We just had our kickoff for the new year, and I every year at kickoff I go through the value set and a principal part of it is I believe in servant leaders and people that put their colleagues and their customers and prospects and constituents ahead of their own personal interests, that those people are going to succeed very, very well. And so I've been able to do that. John and I have been able to do that. John Porter, my co-founder, tremendous guy. And I've been able to, we've been able to succeed or fail based on our own, what's in our control, so to speak, and that has been that's been really gratifying. Atlanta's a great place to build a business. The reason we started here is because I lived here since the late 70s, right? But there's a terrific talent pool in Atlanta. Atlanta's the hub of the South. And there's lots of businesses like Mercedes and State Farm and others being attracted to Atlanta. There's investment being made in Atlanta by people like David Cummings at ATV and the folks down at ATDC and lots of others with a desire, a target to build Atlanta to a top 5 technology center in the in the United States. I think there's a lot more investment needs to be made before Atlanta can graduate to that. But there's also a recognition in Boston and Silicon Valley and other places that, the magic just doesn't exist there. That there's good places, all around the country, all over the world, to build businesses. But I think Atlanta has a special opportunity that has been good for us in modest ways, but I think will be very good for entrepreneurs and businesses looking to build and achieve. And I think the world's gotten smaller too. I mean, the internet is and the availability of communication capability and so forth has some warts on it, but it's made the world smaller and easier to collaborate and remove distances, et cetera.
Well, I think Atlanta has always had a healthy degree of hubris where maybe our outward statements didn't necessarily match reality yet. But, 15 to 20 years later, it catches up. And I'm thinking of, let's think about in the 70s, when, Maynard Jackson wants to make this airport, the greatest in the world. And, you could look at that and think, Atlanta, really? Not that much bigger than Birmingham at the time. And he was he was a number of years behind the actual reality coming, but the things he put in place did it. You could say the same thing about the Olympics. Were we really a global city in 1996? Well, if you count getting the Olympics, maybe if you compare it to a lot of what we think of as our peers, maybe not. And that catches up. And I kind of feel the same way about technology. Are we where we need to be? No. Have we made a lot of good strides and are a lot of amazing things happening in the city? Yes. And so I think the more that, it's sort of the act as if, right? The more you say it, the more that you deem it to be reality, actions are taken by kind of the collective to hopefully make that a reality.
Well, it's an exciting thing. I think Mayor Jackson was a visionary. It's like, what the heck are you talking about? But it turned out to be true. We think in our own world of value management that's the kind of future for not just our technology, but technology in general, of making people more effective at what they do. And there's massive amounts of technology out there that are being weeded out because they're technology for technology's sake rather than technology for value's sake. And not value in the context of what we do, but value in the context of what anything ought to do. And so we're excited about that. I'm a second-generation technology person. My dad was a computer guy from when he was in the service in World War II, and that's how we got started in it. So I've seen, been around it all my life, and I've seen a lot of graduation. And one of my favorite expressions is we're just getting warmed up. I think there's lots to come. Some of it's scary. There's a great company at Atlanta Tech Village called Bark that is a warning technology for parents and teachers to monitor children's activities in the internet and through gaming consoles and cell phones and tablets and countless ways of that predators take advantage of children and so forth. And boy, when I think of what we're doing in value management and selling all that other kind of stuff, it pales in comparison to what those kind of valuable technologies are. And so, and there's a lot like that out there that are hopefully will make life better for people instead of so absorbed in technology. So
I'm familiar with Bark, and I certainly wish that as a parent of two very little kids, so I don't have to deal with any of that stuff yet. But I want to live in a world where that company doesn't have to exist.
Yeah. doubt that's going to happen.
I know.
That's going to happen.
It's a naive wish. But you talked about the future, and like you're building this company. You've got a recent infusion of investment. You're building an application for B2C. What does the next 12 to 18 months hold for DecisionLink?
Yeah, so we are expanding rapidly. We're increasing our sales and marketing significantly. We've got a tremendous product. One of our customers is ServiceNow, one of the great companies in the world. In the past 12 months, they've done over 30,000 business cases or business value assessments. My team of 15 at Siebel 20 years ago, 15 people could produce 400. 30,000. And with no increase in value staff and so forth, it's super exciting. So we've got a great platform that is enterprise ready, commercially hardened, security protocols and all that kind of stuff. But there's lots more to do. So we're ramping up our sales and marketing. We're releasing a product for CMOs on March the 1st that'll be crazy and in a good way. We have a lot of things to build. We recently partnered with a nearshore development organization down in San Salvador that's given us the ability to scale development very rapidly. The first commercial version of Value Cloud was built by 3 guys. We've got 45 people in dev now and working on a ton of projects. And so ramp up. We're looking to triple over the next 3 years. Excel wants to take us public. A lot of things that we weren't even dreaming of even 2 or 3 years ago. So exciting time for us. A lot of new jobs in Atlanta from our company as well as around the country. And I think from a maturity standpoint, we're at an inflection point of we're 55 or 56 customers today. We'll be several hundred within 18 months, and of taking this particular segment. And by the way, we stuck to our guns of saying we're not going to be bucketed into sales enablement or Marcom or so forth. We're value management and of taking this segment to lots of different levels. And so very exciting time for us.
That's great. That is all fantastic. Love to hear of a homegrown Atlanta success. Anyone who's listening who wants to learn more, how do they get in touch with you?
www.DecisionLink.com.
Easy enough. All right, Jim, thanks for joining us.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. Other Jim Garrett, how you doing?
Good. Well, I hate to follow that up. Man.
We like to have a high caliber of guest on here just to keep everyone on their toes,
For sure.
Well, look, you're an interesting case because you've been involved in just a smattering of Atlanta technology companies and many other type of companies. You sit on the board of tech companies like HireWire, which we're going to discuss. You also sit on the board of movie studios like Trilith, with people might previously remember their other name as Pinewood. So I'm interested to pick your brain about how the technology scene has grown, what we're great at, what we're lacking. But specifically right now, you're really involved with HireWire. Mm-hmm. And I want to understand, one, what's unique about HireWire. And two, and this, sort of two sides of the same coin here, you're a picker of winners, right? Part of what you need to do in life is to, if you're going to invest in an organization, put your time into it, you need to think they're a winner. And so I'm curious what is unique about HireWire that leads you, who's been involved in so many different organizations, to think it's a winner.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. Well, I think specifically to that question, it fills a need. One of the things that I talk about a lot when I go down to Tech or Auburn or any of these technology schools is the fact that so many people develop solutions for a problem that doesn't exist or or at least is not perceived to exist. And so they find it very frustrating that they come up with this great way of doing things that nobody really cares about. So the best thing about HireWire is it was designed to specifically fill a need. And a couple of years ago, in fact, 2005, I started a company called Kudzu Interactive, and we later changed the name to Snapfinger for the consumer brand. But we developed the technology and have patents on remote ordering, both web and mobile, into the restaurant industry. And so if you ordered food online, which a lot of people now do, you were using our platform. And during that time, we were fortunate enough to get about an 80% market share, and I got to know the CEOs of pretty much every major restaurant chain in the country. And one of the common themes that I heard from all of them, without even prompting them, is their single biggest need by a huge margin is the ability to access talent quickly. And the reason for that is because when you look at the restaurant and, for that matter, retail and hospitality industry, those employees are largely interchangeable. And they're generally lower skilled. They generally need to be found locally because typically people are not going to drive an hour through traffic to $10 or $15 an hour job, right? So what was unique about their need is that when you take a look at those industries specifically, it represents about 40 million hires per year. And the reason for that is there's about a 200% turnover in restaurant, retail, and hospitality. And what's unique about it as well is people don't give notice. It's not like they give a 2-week notice. It's like they don't show up because it was a pretty day and they went fishing, right? Because they can go across the street and get the same job tomorrow. Right?
John was here one day. He's not the next. Where did John go?
Right.
Yeah.
And so what happens is that void lands squarely on the operator, owner, franchisee, and that's not what they signed up for. And so they've got to find people quickly. So the whole idea behind HireWire, which is unique, is it's not really a job board. It's a place where jobs kind of find you. And people get hired very quickly, and it's largely based on, a little bit about their experience, but more about their availability and sort of how close they are to wherever the opportunity is. And so for years, the industry essentially practiced the same hiring process as companies that hire professionals, where they set up interviews and expect a resume. Well, the kind of job opportunities that HireWire addresses, there are no resumes. There's bullet points.
And that just seems like such a laborious process for those types of jobs and those types of jobs that turn over so quickly.
Well, that's exactly what sort of inspired us is I kept hearing from these CEOs that not only was the process broken, the problem was it was so inefficient. And believe it or not, they told me that the single biggest frustration point for them is people don't show up for interviews that they do set up. So, for example, we built into our platform this confirmation, sort of a dual handshake confirmation of people showing up for the interviews. And for most of these opportunities, we're talking about a 15-minute interview process. It's not that complicated. So, generally speaking, someone can make a decision, to hire somebody pretty quickly. And so one of the great things that our application does is it gives owner-operator of any of these establishments the ability to somewhat screen them ahead of time. So it's a bit like what I understand a dating app might
Stole
might
the comparison right out of my mouth, Jim.
I'm past the dating app. I've been married 40 years, and they didn't have dating apps. So, but from what I understand, it's very similar because it gives people, the ability to very quickly create a sort of a file or a bucket of candidates that they might like to interview, and a file for those that is not really worth their time. So it really is an efficient way for this specific industry.
Yeah. Well, and so I've only been married 9 years, but still, we were courting way before this was the norm. So I have never used a dating app, but what I imagine it to be, the profile, the filters, the swiping left or swiping right, I imagine that sort of functionality and ease of meeting and teaming up and filtering are elements of the technology.
Exactly.
Yes.
I mean, a lot of it, again, like I said, has to do with your availability. One of the things that many people that work part-time, and by the way, which is pretty much everybody in those industries, largely because those industries don't want to provide health care. So they're not going to let their people work more than 30 hours a week. So a lot of them have multiple part-time jobs. Mm-hmm. So they have to fit into their schedule, sort of piece it together of what works for them. So,
and look, people listening to this might say, well, okay, I understand the problem, but you've got these platforms like Indeed or ZipRecruiter, right? Anyone who's listening to this show probably enjoys podcasts, and anyone who enjoys podcasts has probably heard a million advertisements for ZipRecruiter and Indeed.
Right.
So why is this filling a void that those two companies cannot or have not touched on?
Right. Well, those platforms, and they're great, but they're really designed primarily for professional, skilled labor access. In many cases, management and executive level talent. HireWire is not for that. In fact, I would probably even argue if you were looking for like an executive within restaurant, retail, or hospitality, it's still not that platform. This is a platform that's really targeting people in that minimum wage to slightly above minimum wage to find opportunities quickly, and for the employers to find the people quickly and fill that need very specifically. So it's very narrow silo, but it's a large silo because of the volume of activity.
Yep.
Like I said, there's roughly 50 million hires a year just in the United States in restaurant, retail, and hospitality. And it's not like those industries are growing. It's 50 million hires because the turnover. Just
the churn in and of itself, and the fact that, sadly, a lot of these people have more than one job.
Right.
Now, what is very interesting to me about HireWire, in addition to just the need that it serves, which I do agree with you, is a true need and is a value beyond what some might think of as competitors, but really aren't. It's its history, right? Tell me a little bit more about its history and why this is a unique point in the life cycle of HireWire.
Yeah, great question. And by the way, one other kind of key point is those other two companies you talked about. This is actually kind of important and unique to understand. Those are job boards where the hiring side of the equation, it's a two-sided marketplace. So you have a supply side and a demand side. And so on the demand side of the equation with an Indeed or a ZipRecruiter, it's all driven by originating a job post where somebody says, hey, I need X, right? The difference in HireWire is people put themselves out there, and people looking to hire people find them. So it's almost like a reverse process, number one. To your question about why is this a unique time, well, HireWire was started actually about 4 or 5 years ago, and we put in about $4 million of capital. We had went through experience where platform itself sort of missed the mark originally, and so they kind of had to go back and rethink the customer experience and essentially rebuild the platform. So there was sort of a false start that cost some money, and then they built it, and I think they sort of lost their way because being a two-sided marketplace, you have to create a great customer experience on both sides of the equation. And in order to do that, you have to be very focused on a market before you can start to expand. And I think the challenge is, like here in Atlanta back a couple of years ago, there were 7,000 restaurants just in Atlanta on the platform. And it was having great success and a big, hockey stick growth. Lots of people on the application. I think there were over 100,000 people that basically put their profile out there. That's sort of like the LinkedIn for the lower skilled labor market. And what happened was they sort of lost the focus on the business and got sort of attracted by the idea of getting venture capital funding quickly. And so venture capital markets are mostly interested in investing in how to scale your business, not how to start your business. And so because of that, they started going into other cities, big markets like Dallas and San Francisco and LA too quickly. And what that did was spread their resources. So the lesson there is for entrepreneurs is you have to think big but act small. And you have to really dominate somewhere first and really sort of figure out what's working and what's not working before you start to scale, because scaling with things that aren't working is bound to sort of sink your ship, so to speak. So we're in a unique position as we basically let HireWire go into an idle mode for about 2 years and weren't really sure, what to do with it. The investors were sort of like, we're not putting any more money in it, et cetera, et cetera. But so many people have called for us to sort of relight it. And oddly enough, during the past 2 years, it has maintained a pretty decent level of revenue without, any employees, so to speak. So it's continued to function very well. And so we've decided, based on some of the market conditions created by COVID and the need for so many of these people in the industry to rehire again and almost start over, that we're going to invest and start over and focus here in Atlanta first and then start to branch out after that.
See, this is just amazing to me, and it is. I mean, it's hard enough for a business to succeed to begin with,
Amen.
Right? Okay, and the fact that you've basically shifted this thing into neutral. There's been no people, no culture supporting it whatsoever, and this thing is still, albeit modest, but my God, with no employees or care, still bringing in monthly revenue.
Yes.
It's a testament to the product and the need. Maybe coming back from the dead is not necessarily the right term because, it never met its demise. But, for a company to get a second chance like this, it's exceedingly rare.
It's actually one of the reasons that it inspired me to do something with it. I wasn't really looking for anything to do. In fact, I'm not running the company. We're actually looking for a CEO right now because I'm just not there in my life to spend that kind of time and energy with it. But yes, oddly enough, the former executive management team kind of ran the company out of money and really left it no choice but to shut it down other than to keep everything operational. So there's been no employees for 2 years and 4 months. And it still does over $500,000 a year in revenue, year in, year out during that. We just ended this year and it did over $500,000 in 2020. So, and that's largely just here in Atlanta. So it's almost hilarious, you know, that you can't kill it.
Yeah, really. Yes, it's wow. Well, look, that really speaks to the opportunity, right? If it can do that here in Atlanta without any, tending to, imagine what it can do when you actually put a team behind this thing to supercharge it.
Right.
And so when I think about the future of this, so look, obviously you started this based upon a need that you heard, even very specific, the restaurant industry. Okay, we can tack retail onto that as well. Is there a case to be made that this applies to, again, I think here in Georgia, very, very prominent industry, logistics, warehouse workers, those sort of hourly employees? I mean, I imagine that this isn't just retail. There's a whole lot of other applications, but of course, you've got to focus at the beginning.
Right. You're absolutely right. There are ancillary markets such as, what you mentioned, warehouse and also events and all types of things where they need lower skilled labor and they need them quickly and it fills a need. And there actually is some of that on the application now. But for me, because of just the high degree of turnover, we have focused originally on restaurant, retail, and hospitality because they're somewhat interchangeable. Once you get into warehouse and other stuff, it's generally a little bit of a different type person looking for those types of jobs and shifts and hours and things like that. But that capability is there. It can be expanded. And there's no real geographical boundaries on this. I mean, we could use this app anywhere in the world.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So look, you've been growing companies and funding them in the Atlanta area for a long time now. And I'm curious of your, Jim Berryhill and I touched a little bit upon this, what's changed, what hasn't. I'm curious of your diagnosis, your barometer of success or lack thereof, how far we've come or haven't in the past, I don't know, let's call it 2 decades or so.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I have been in the technology world for quite a while here in Atlanta, and I was always curious of that myself. And first off, you have to face the facts, and the fact of the matter is there's been no meaningful VC presence in the Atlanta market ever, period. There's been some small people, kind of play around at it, but there's not the type of energy there is on the West Coast.
Right.
And so,
Jim's got to go to California to talk to Excel.
Exactly. And so there's a very good reason for that, by the way. And money takes the path of least resistance. And years ago in the state of California, they opened up the Teachers Union Pension Fund to be able to be invested in higher risk opportunities, and it created this flood of money into that market that basically spawned the venture capital industry. And of course, now it's self-sustaining because they've made so much money, it's ridiculous, and so they just keep reinvesting that. In Atlanta, we're kind of unique because we have so many companies that spawn off great people in the payments industry, in the logistics industry, in the medical industry, but there's just a void of capital to put back into it. And so even the capital that's here is largely just sophisticated angel money.
Yep.
It's sort of cobbled together. And so I think for us to do that is going to require some legislative changes to it. And to give you a great example of what I mean by that, several years ago, the state of Georgia created a tax credit opportunity for movies to be made in the state of Georgia. There are now more major, what they call tentpole movies being made in Georgia than in Hollywood. All right? The reason is because they made it financially lucrative for people to do that. So today, you mentioned I sit on the board of Trillo Studios. It's the second largest movie studio facility in North America. We're currently filming 5 major movies down there with Disney and Marvel and Paramount. And basically the facilities down there are fully booked for the next 3 years. And the point is this: once the government looks at how to create incentives for money to come in and be put to work, the money will find the place.
Sure.
And so I think I would love to see an initiative by this state to say, you know what, you've got Georgia Tech here, you've got the University of Georgia, you've got so many great schools in and around the city of Atlanta. The only thing missing is the fuel. And we'd love to see that happen.
Well, I think the movie industry analogy is a very apt one. I mean, from a real estate perspective, I'm personally working with one now, that is kind of in high gear and sees the opportunity here based upon everything that has happened in the past, decade or so. Who would have thought that a decade ago that the state of Georgia would be synonymous with the movie industry? Who would have thought that at the end credits we would see the little peach symbol?
Right.
It's just, it's unbelievable, really. And now, I mean, the industry can't really be separated from Georgia.
No,
Yeah.
it's the genie's out of the bottle, but I think what it does is it should wake people up to realization that you can put things in place and put things in motion that create sort of a magnet for capital. And we've got the talent here. We've got the innovation. We've got a lot of great companies here in Georgia that, as people there start to focus on a niche, they leave those companies and go off and start their own businesses. We just need to create a venture capital environment that supports it.
Well, it sounds like once you're done riding the ship on Highwire, you got to go talk to Governor Kemp.
That's right. We've had discussions about it for sure, but you got to get the whole legislature on board.
Yeah. Well, look, if anyone wants to learn more about Highwire, or you got a qualified CEO who just happens to be listening to this conversation,
right,
how do they get in touch with
Just
you?
Jim at hirewire.com, HIREWIRE.
Okay. Jim, thanks for joining.
Sure. Thank you.
Anita, you've been waiting patiently over there. How you doing?
Hi, good morning. I'm doing well, thank you.
Excellent. Okay, so we are here to talk about mySupplier. You are the Chief Operating Officer of mySupplier.
Yes, I joined the company in 2015, about a year after the company was founded. My journey began as the operations manager, and just have been blessed to grow as the company has grown, and became the vice president of operations, and then in 2019, the COO.
Your story and position, I think, is an interesting vantage point, because a lot of times on this show we have, C-level executives, but they happen to be some sort of a co-founder. You're there from the beginning, right? You've seen this company from its infancy to the stage as it is now, but you might not have sort of the blinding, love for the child that is your company. You have sort of an outside vantage point as well as an inside vantage point of what's going on in there, I would imagine.
Absolutely. I work with some great visionaries in our company, and I always say that, I'm the one that takes the vision and tries to make it happen. So in that, we really started out as a energy efficient lighting company in 2014.
Okay.
And then as we expanded our business model, we added auditing and turnkey services into our business model. And basically taking the layers of the industry, which was auditing, procurement, design, specification, installation, and rebate management, and bringing that into one company and essentially creating a one-stop shop for customers with a flexible engagement model.
Okay, and so when we say customers, are you working with owners of property, or are you working with contractors who service those buildings?
So we partner with contractors and energy service companies and national accounts to provide technology solutions to create smart buildings that are IoT-driven technologies through our partnership with Enlighten, which is a Siemens company, as well as creating sustainable, energy-efficient buildings. And then smart buildings where safe buildings where we focus on healthy work environments.
Okay.
So basically covering a building from every single angle.
Okay, IoT is a bit of a buzzword, and for good reason. But for those listening that aren't necessarily familiar with what that is and why it is important now and in the future, give a little primer, please.
Absolutely. So there's a lot of different facets to it, depending on the building type or industry. Anything from your commercial and industrial to even retail. Just to give you an example, asset tracking is one of those, and how that happens is there's a beacon in the lighting, and then an asset tag put on a piece of merchandise or that kind of thing. Just to give you an example, Atlanta Airport. So you wouldn't believe the amount of time that is spent looking for wheelchairs. Passengers that are disabled have to get on the flights first, right? Mm-hmm. So you can put that beacon in, that's in the lighting, and put that tag on a wheelchair, bring up an application that will be able to show the airport personnel exactly where an available wheelchair is. That speeds up time. That creates, flights to be on time. Just a few minutes here or there can really make a difference. You can also put those on, create geofencing for retail, in which you, can put those on merchandise to be able to create, an area in which if a piece of merchandise goes outside that geofencing, then, that is identified. Too, we've had trucking companies that put asset tags on, couches and different pieces of furniture to make sure it got in the right truck. So there's just so many different applications that can happen from an asset tracking, energy optimization, just a lot of different ways that IoT can be used.
I mean, look, the wheelchair example is such an unsexy example of how this technology can be used. But those type of examples are often the ones that have the most opportunity to be disrupted. I'm constantly amazed at, not just what you read about in your daily life, but the people that I have on the show that talk about this problem that it's like you would think the technology has solved every single analog solution that we have. And, you just consistently learn that, no, there are so many things out there that are being done inefficiently, so simply that technology can help. And I totally believe it with the wheelchair example, right? Just think about the way that we all treat shopping carts at a grocery store, right? Sometimes we put them back. Sometimes we're in a hurry and you kind of leave them, out in in the area that's not the designated area. And if you can multiply that by 10 on how people would treat wheelchairs at an airport. So that makes total sense. And I'd imagine that asset tracking is not just an ability to streamline a process and create efficiencies for the buildings and customers that you're serving, but also so that, they're not losing money, right? Not having to buy additional inventory because they just don't know where it is.
Absolutely. It can also be life-saving measures too. We've seen that in hospitals where doctors need to know where crash carts are. Or nurses need to know where a cart is for this emergency or that emergency. So it really does have multiple industry implications. So,
okay, you're serving generally contractors that are servicing a building, okay? Do you have any interaction with, a purchasing department, a supply chain executive? It seemed to me that these sort of technologies would be extremely important to them.
So as you can imagine, the in the industry and so to speak, construction, because a lot of what we do is through the lighting, and how we got our original start in 2014 was we started as a lighting efficiency company. And just as we have grown and, changed that business model, we're still, we still tend to partner with those, contractors, energy service companies, and, national accounts is where we might have more of a direct customer relationship with those types of businesses. But otherwise, we're considered more of a partner when we work with the service companies and the contractors, and more of an extension of their company. A lot of times that with the services that we're providing, they don't have to go out and hire, we're bringing a lot of multiple layers in from the industry, so they don't have to go to several companies to, get a design work done, to get, procurement. So we're bringing that all into one house. But then we also are able to, streamline sometimes their ability for their team so they can take on bigger projects, sometimes more projects in a year based on the services that we're providing them.
Got it. Okay. Why is this mission important right now? What is going on in the world, in the particular industries that you serve, that these functions really make a difference in the time that we're speaking at?
Well, just for example, our safe building platform is really designed for the health and safety of a building, and that division of our company came to be this past year in 2020 due to COVID. We pivoted our company. We had, in 2019, we had our best year. We had doubled our revenue from the previous year, and we were on track for 2020 to do the same. And then our core business was impacted by COVID. It was rocked. Mm-hmm. Projects were being put on hold. Basically, our customers couldn't even open their businesses because of PPE shortages in the industry, throughout the country. And so what we had to do, we quickly realized that we have to pivot, and we have to, we pivoted our company. We leveraged our expertise in technology and our global supply chain relationships, and we basically created that safe building division based out of health and safety needs for our customers. So not only were we able to put, critical PPE in the hands of our customers, but we were also able to supply 5 million N95 masks to Arizona State Department, and as well as thermal imaging devices for temperature screenings and UVC lighting disinfecting products in schools and businesses.
Yeah. Well, that makes, and look, I wanted to ask you about kind of what all businesses have had to make adjustments, and it sounds like you guys were able to really move quickly and, pivot your services where they were really needed. And, as an attribution to how well things have gone, I think your CEO is right now opening up some sort of Canadian operation. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah. We have offices in South America, India, and Canada. So we are expanding those offices in Canada. We really had planned to do a little bit quicker in 2020. It was part of our 2020 plan that kind of got pushed into 2021. COVID related to that, kind of pushed that out a little bit. But we're excited at the growth of our company. I'm just, have been blessed to grow with the company and many of our team members as well. We essentially started our company with 4 people back in 2014. So, and now we have grown to 25 to 30 team members on our team now. So it's been a great journey.
And so what are you spending most of your time on these days?
So I'm the operations manager. I really am the process person in our company. So as you can imagine, when you are growing a company from as small as we are to what we are today, there's a lot of processes along the way, from processes of just from each department and their how they play into our success and the success of our company, and that's a big part of what I do is just work with each department and streamline processes and support our CEO and majority owner in our vision for the future of the company as well.
And the vision for the future, I mean, if I caught up with you in 12 to 18 months, what would we be talking about?
Yeah, we are wanting to continue to grow. I think that our, what's happening in our country and the focus on energy efficiency for buildings, and we want to be part of that. And I think that most everyone, even before something would be mandated, really wants to, save energy, keep their employees safe and their clients safe and protect their revenue streams. And I think that's a big part of what we have to contribute. And we're just looking forward to continuing our growth and expansion across the U.S.
Well, look, as someone in commercial real estate, I mean, I feel like there's a massive opportunity for y'all with landlords, building owners, development owners that, some of the best ones were focused on this already. And now, even the mediocre ones have to be focused on all this stuff now. It's just, it's the price of getting in the room and recruiting, a business to want to be a part of your development or a building. It's not a nice to have. It's a, assumed. What are you doing on this front now?
Yeah, absolutely. And when you're taking the multiple layers of the industry and putting that into one company, I think that's appealing to customers. You're not going to one company to procure your items and another design company and another company for installation. When you come to mySupplier, we can handle it all. We also do a lot of rebate research in different states of how that can bring down the cost of the project and really drive that ROI. As well as there's a lot of programs out there. We did a lot of work last year, despite COVID and stay-at-home work orders and all of that in California last year for 34 buildings, warehouse buildings, we did in a span of basically 3 months, which is amazing when I think about it. So from July into October, and those were through a program on bill financing. Mm-hmm. So it was a great way that this customer could, retrofit the lighting and really bring down their energy cost. And then also, take advantage of rebates and on-bill financing programs in that state.
That's great. That's great to hear that you guys have been so busy even throughout all of this.
Yeah, absolutely. Blessed.
So if those listening want to learn more about what you guys do at mySupplier, how is the best way to get in touch?
Yeah, so if you're wanting to check us out, LinkedIn, we have a huge LinkedIn presence, including a mySupplier Cares program, where we contribute PPE to nonprofit and local schools, and that's through our LinkedIn mySupplier, as well as our website, which is www.mysupplier.com.
Great. All right, Jim, and Anita, thank you all so much for joining and making this a great Tech Talk. And as always, thanks to our great partner, Trevelino Keller, for help putting this on. Have a great day.
Thanks so much.